Good evening, class. We're going to discuss Chapter 11 tonight and over the next, I don't know, two or three, maybe four segments, haven't decided. But before we jump into Chapter 11 and get started, I want to go back and go over Chapter 10, which I actually thought it had a lot of salient points, especially if you are so inclined to work for a global company or function in a global environment. And I think it's become more and more of a desirable opportunity for individuals to work for a global company. There's travel involved, um, meet new people, learn different interesting cultures, and I think it is definitely a draw. And when you talk about global leadership, remember in the text, they basically talked about two types of global leadership. You've either got I'll call it the traditional definition of an expat, go and live in another country outside of the United States. And I'm talking about the expat of the United States, as opposed to basically the global definition of an expat is anybody that lives outside of their country of origin. I think it's for up to 6 months. And typically, they expats take their families with them. They don't like to be away from families for long periods of time. Plus, it gives the family the opportunity to get out and and enjoy some new culture and see some new parts of the world that they might not ever see. And then the other kind of opportunity is what they termed was global domestic, and that's where you're still um, housed in the United States, but you've got teams scattered across the world, and you're working in a global economy that way. So depends on which one that you like to pursue. I think there are great opportunities on either avenue that you'd like to, especially if you want to get into a global company. And the authors do a good job of laying this out, and they talk about you understand your own culture to understand others' culture. And remember, they went through, I don't know, there were seven or eight of them. Talked about the United States, the cultural looseness, people can change to better themselves, individualism versus collectivism. So I think the example of collectivism was individuals working in a global economy that for the most part is functioning in the Far East at some point, especially Japan. Uh, Universalism, doing is better than being. Time should be rewarded. Um, Past is gone, future is the only thing that's important, and openness versus directives. And so that I think in a nutshell, as I said, I think the authors do a good job laying this out. And again, this is one of the to me one of the more interesting chapters in the textbook. Global orientation factors, and remember they laid out three of them for you: global business know-how, cross-cultural know-how, and cross-cultural engagement. And especially the cross-cultural know-how and the cross-cultural engagement, those are going to be extremely important, especially if you fall into that traditional category of an expat. The last thing they tried to drive home in the text was to avoid misinterpretations. And I think that is extremely important. If you think back, you've probably seen a multitude of movies that had that vein kind of flowing through the movies where some comedy, some serious, where misinterpretation gets characters in the movie in a lot of trouble throughout the movie. So again, if you're going to go the global entity route, um, you may want to keep this chapter 11 kind of in your back pocket, and I'm actually in chapter 10 in your back pocket. So we're good with that. We're going to jump into chapter 11, and they talk about in chapter 11 inspirational and visionary leadership. I think about I mean, I don't know how many of you are already out in the workforce, um, and functioning. Since this is a graduate level class, I'm assuming at least some of you are out functioning in the market today, or in working for a firm somewhere along the way. And maybe you have been the situation similar to what I have over the past, working in a health plan. you see a lot of change at the top of the health plan. CEOs come and go, COOs come and go, CFOs, a lot of shuffling, and it's kind of an incestuous market because a lot of those C-level, C-suite type positions just kind of float around from one health plan to the next. And every time a new kind of a C-suite individual comes in and wants to put their stamp on an organization, they'll go through this visionary meeting, and they pull everybody together and they throw up some PowerPoint slides, and it's everything is they're kind of upbeat, and typically in an organization they will have somebody in communications or marketing that and those individuals, their fund meter seems like it's on overdrive all the time. And I think that's the mentality of those individuals that a lot of times end up in those types of positions. But they'll be kind of moderating the meeting, and you'll sit through the meeting, and after it's over, you'll walk out, and you're asking yourself, well, that was weird. I mean, the guy, that individual's vision, our new leader's vision, isn't much different than the old leader's vision. And he may have been upbeat about it and had some really neat PowerPoint slides, but I'm not sure his vision is all that special, and I'm not even sure that he communicated it in such a way that those of us in the room understood how it was going to impact what we do on a daily basis. So I've seen that a lot, and maybe it's, since I've mostly, spent the majority of my career in healthcare, maybe it's just a function of being in healthcare. I don't know. Maybe other industries or other firms, it's different when there's new leadership, or the current leader has a new vision that he or she wants to roll out. So I don't know. Maybe you've been more fortunate than I am, but and I think this chapter points out some interesting concepts. I think a lot of it is kind of rehashed and trying to tie, putting a new spin on some of the information that we've gone through in some of the earlier chapters, but not chapter 11 is not a bad chapter. I didn't enjoy it nearly as much as I did chapter 10, but we'll kind of walk through it. And they talk about, when they started out, they talk about inspiration and influence. It's the essence of leadership is to be able to inspire. And I agree. I think that's a valid statement. Influence in a special way, positive, maybe, intangible reasons. So if you're a leader and you can inspire individuals, it goes a long way in influencing them to help you move a team from point A to point B. And then they talk about the connection between bases of power and influence. And they give you a couple of definitions in there. Power is the ability to get things done or to drive goals. Power is the basis of influence. And for a lot of leaders, that is the case. And they go through kind of the basis of power, and they try to tie it back to influence and tactics. And they end up giving you a couple of definitions of hard power and soft power. And hard power, it's coercive, formal, legitimate. It's based on reward and resources, sources of power that tend to be derived on the basis of one's position in an organizational hierarchy. So hard power, for the most part, and I think it's a true statement, it's a basis of one's position. If your CEO walks in and says, I need you to do this, and I need you to have it done by this date, you're pretty much going to do it. It's not out, and I've had a lot of, and I guess it was based on a lot of the work I've done in the past in healthcare. A lot of it was analytical type work, medical informatics, medical economics, clinical effectiveness. A lot of these analytical, generating information, helping senior management develop their management strategies, develop their visions. And it's not out of the ordinary to have either somebody, CEO, CFO, COO, stop by your office on a Friday afternoon, say 6, 7 o'clock at night, and say, I got to have this by Monday morning at 8 o'clock. And you're sitting there thinking, why didn't you come to me earlier? But because of their position, you're going to work the weekend and you're going to get them the information they need in the format that they want it in by 8 o'clock on Monday morning. And then they talk about the soft power. It's an expert or personal sources of power that do not rely on one's position in an organization. And indeed, the basis of power can be applied by people at any level. So it's not a factor of your position. It's not really driven by one's position or you're, a leader that walks into your office and says, I got to have, they're not going to come in and say, I've got to have this by 8 o'clock Monday morning. They're going to walk in and say, I know this is late, minute, and I really hate to ask, but I really need some information by 8 o'clock on Monday morning. Is there anything you can do to help me out? And if somebody approached me in the past and pitched a request in that, frame of mind or that tone, absolutely. I'd do everything I could to get them the information by 8 o'clock on Monday morning. And I wouldn't think twice about it. I'd work the weekend. Okay. If I need to work the weekend to get you that information, I'll do everything I can to get that information. And again, it's not based on power. Anybody within the company can use this soft power approach. And I think soft power goes a long way. One of the individuals or one of the positions in a company, or at least in a health plan, is project management, that driving a lot of projects, driving a lot of grant proposals, needing information on a short term because depending on who the grant's for, the individual that's put the grant out for people to bid on or put an RFP out for people to bid on, they are notorious for changing their minds at the last minute. So there's always this mad rush and this scramble to get information out the door, kind of at the end of the day or really short timelines. And this soft power approach works so much better than a hard power approach. And you as a leader, if there's any way in the world that you can stay away from this coercive, demanding hard power approach, I suggest you kind of veer away from that and kind of go down the road of that soft power approach. If you're looking at soft power, it can be applied, as I said, anyone at any level. Results are basically a strong commitment, individual accomplishments, favorable personal characteristics, behaviors that others want to emulate, may form a better foundation for power in the long run. So again, you go back and you've got the hard power approach, the demanding leader that's, he's trying to intimidate and coerce people into towing the line and doing doing his bidding. And then you've got the soft power approach. And again, if there's any way that you can follow that soft power approach going forward, I think it does a really good job, especially in the long run, developing your leadership style and gaining some respect from your followers going forward. And when you're talking about influencing tactics, I think they go a long way. They talk about a clear connection between bases of power and how a leader chooses to influence others. Punishment may be used in a corrective manner. So it's not that punishment is never required or punishment is never desired, because sometimes, especially individuals, go back to that out group, what we've talked about on multiple occasions. You have individuals in the out group that may not be performing up to their level. You may have to put they call them in most, at least in health plans, they call them a CAP, a corrective action plan, and you set them down. And depending on how you present that corrective action plan to one of your followers, it's going to go. If you take that soft power approach, it's going to go a long way in helping to turn that individual around. And when you're kind of influencing individuals, be clear about what you want to seek. Clarity and directness can be valuable. Sometimes quid pro quo works. And when you're talking about quid pro quo, it's all about transactions and rewards. It, can be limited, in tangible terms, but there may be some intangible terms. And remember, one of the earlier chapters, we talked about tangible and intangible rewarding, and tangible and intangible types of approaches. Strong expertise gives way to rational persuasion. So if you've got expertise in a given area, it will go a long way in persuading your followers to help you move from point A to point B, to help you accomplish goals, because they will look up to you, and then you will develop respect based on your level of expertise and experience. Reverent power to feel good about being around you, respect and trust is potent for a leader. And I think that is a very valid point. If you have the respect of your team, they really enjoy working with you, and they really enjoy being around you. I've seen teams in the past that did different health plans working for other VPs, and you can tell the teams aren't happy. And I've seen these VPs in meetings, and the way they treat their peers, it's not conducive. They take that, the hard power approach. I'm a vice president of network management, and you're going to do exactly what I tell you to do. And if you don't fall in line, then it just goes show how stupid you are. And I've actually been in meetings and heard people, go down that road, and it just doesn't. It doesn't sit well with not only followers but peers in an organization. Leaders should develop full range of bases of power and influence tactics. So again, go all the way back to chapter 2, was it, where they talked about leadership effectiveness, leader, follower, context. And depending on the context, you as a leader might have to integrate the kind of the hard power and the soft power kind of basis there to get individuals to move from point A to point B, or to get a team to meet their goals or to function properly. And it's okay to kind of move them together. Where you get into or kind of integrate them together, before you get into trouble is if you are predominant leaning all the time in one direction or another, especially if you're leaning toward that hard power direction. It can get extremely difficult to lead a team forward. Targets of influence, you've got followers, you've got allies and network. And when they talk about the allies and network, it goes back to the political savvy. Talking about somebody can go in and they know how to work the room. They go into a room and they can see, well, of these 6 individuals in the room, I need to make sure that I get to know, A, D, and E, because I can build a network. And with building that network, it's going to help me as I go down the road if I'm trying to influence individuals to help me work on a project, to help me to get from point A to point B, especially if these individuals are your peers within an organization. At this point, we're going to stop, but when we come back, we're going to talk about charismatic and transformational leadership. I'm not sure I've ever considered myself charismatic, but definitely been involved in a lot of transformational leadership roles. So when we come back, we'll dig a little deeper into that. See everybody in a minute.